Hi, Luke Savage. Thank you for coming on. I hope you're good. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Hello.
Good stuff. Right. Let's just get going. I'll first question. What do you think of COVID and the vaccine, and answer in your own way, your own time?
Okay. Well, yeah, I saw your video on Instagram, I think it was, and I know you've been interviewing people. I came forward just because basically, I guess I argue for mostly the mainstream view of COVID. Well, i.e., that it exists and that it's, while it's not dangerous for a lot of people, it is very dangerous for some people, and the vaccines are safe and effective, and again, doesn't mean that they have no problems whatsoever, but it's, yeah, I just wanted to come on and advocate for what I consider to be the reasonable position in terms of public health. Like, I worry because I love elements of the hippie movement, and a lot of our friends are kind of adjacent to that or involved in kind of the more hippie side of things. A lot of people we know, a lot of mutual friends, are very skeptical about the mainstream narrative and things like that. So, which I understand, but I just want to try and come on and offer the position of science.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let's start with, okay, why would, for some people to come and say, the extreme view of there is no COVID, like that, a very extreme view, there is no virus, it's all maybe a master plan, this or that. How would you explain that there is a virus, first of all? I mean, I know it might sound simple, but please, let's start.
Yeah, I would ask those people where all the people in care homes have gone. I mean, there's some care homes in the UK with 50% death rate.
Right. Okay.
You don't get that in a normal year. A really, really, really bad flu year, you don't get that. And for example, I would encourage people to watch, I think last January, when it was really bad, almost exactly a year ago, there was the BBC just went into the Royal London Hospital with a camera in the ICU, and the ICU is completely full of patients ranging between age, mid-30s all the way up to 80, 90 years old. Okay. Obviously, at this point, the doctors are choosing to prioritize who lives and who dies, so they're prioritizing the younger people. I actually watched it with my grandfather just after he got his second Pfizer shot. So I went to visit him because I hadn't seen him for a year, but he just got his second Pfizer shot. So this is a year ago. He was very early in the vaccination program because he's 87. And we were sat watching the telly, and this came on, and the consultants going, okay, the ICU is full. We run out of ventilators, and then you look, the shot goes down the corridor, and there are many, many, many more people in hospital beds, literally in the corridor, waiting to get in to this ICU, and there's no room. And they're sharing oxygen with people, and the doctors are having to literally choose who lives and who dies. It's like, well, this guy's got 6 kids, so we'll save him. This person, and there's many doctors across the country and across many countries were put in that kind of situation. I just wonder whether those people think, has that footage been entirely fake? Were all the nurses actors? Were all the doctors actors? I mean, you can find out who that doctor is. Like, his face appeared on camera.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I know that was a bit of a long answer, but I would encourage people to watch the BBC piece a year ago, if they can still find it, from the Royal London Hospital, or any other piece that's covered coronavirus, where you can just see that hospitals are full, like they're full.
A lot of people don't trust the BBC at all at the moment, do they? For whatever reason. So I don't know. Maybe some people just hearing you say BBC are just like, no, that's fake news.
Well, yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, and I would say to them, I have my own problems with the BBC. I'm a socialist. I'm I was massively behind the Jeremy Corbyn and the Corbyn project, and the BBC, along all other media, like completely demonized him.
Yeah.
And didn't portray a fair representation. The media can lie, right? That's not what I'm saying. I also have a healthy distrust of authority. The thing I would ask is everyone in that documentary an actor? Because that seems quite implausible, right? The BBC can frame things weirdly. They can not show some things. They can highlight others. But getting a camera inside a hospital where it's full of people dying, it just seems they couldn't fake that. You know, they couldn't. And basically, it's set my phone on silent. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. And then that also lines up with, you know, people I know, people you know, are good friends in this friendship circle, you know, that work in the healthcare service.
Yeah.
You know, Molly, Naomi, Kaiser, lots of people we know who've seen doctors and nurses go to the COVID wards and in some cases not come back. And, you know, in the case of Naomi, who worked in A&E, you know, seeing the numbers of people coming in very, very, very sick. Yeah. You know, is Naomi, I'm sorry to bring up your name here, Naomi, but is Naomi an agent of the state? Is she a paid agent of the state?
Well, I've met her before, and I've never had that impression from it.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, how far does it need to go? In order for this to be fake, how far does it need to go? It needs to be literally millions of people. The NHS is the biggest employer of any employer in the country. Are they all lying?
Yeah.
How much are they being paid to lie?
Yeah. Well, I'd have thought about it. Like, say if there is a, I don't know, what do you call it, a shadow government or shadow government, Illuminati, whatever we want to call this.
Illuminati,
yeah.
I call it Illuminati as well because of the side.
Illuminati, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've come from, you know, like a conspiracy upbringing, just, you know, myself and the internet to a point. I don't know how deep down any rabbit holes I ever was at any point, but I like to look at things logically, and it's like, does that logically make sense? Does it add up? And just there's many different ways of looking at the logic. And one way I'd look at it is, how often do you say, go out, talk to normal people, and these normal people complain about their jobs? Oh, that job, I don't like that job. I don't like my job. I'm going to get a new job. Now, for the millions of people, the millions of moving parts that would need to be in place for this shadow government to exist, like, who does their admin, for example? Like, you know, all these roles that need to happen for something that big to be a thing that works.
Yeah.
No, you never meet someone in the pub who's like, oh, I'm not liking my job at the moment. Or where do you work? Oh, I work for the shadow government. I'm thinking of leaving.
Exactly. And how much would the story be worth? Like, if you were in on the shadow government and you were in on the COVID's hoax thing and you were in on it, how much would that story be worth? If you had irrefutable evidence, right, that this whole thing was manufactured, right? And when I say manufactured, I don't mean, because we can talk about this a little bit later, but I actually do think this virus came from a lab.
Interesting.
That's my personal view. I think it was a mistake. I think it was a mistake. I think basically the Chinese, well, interestingly, it's not just the Chinese, because we funded that lab as well alongside the Americans. It's a thing called gain of function research, where you essentially offense is the best defense, they say. That's an American pronunciation, but you basically train viruses so that you know what you're dealing with, so that you can beat them when they evolve, right?
Very interesting.
That's sort of the idea. And I think they were doing that, which is dangerous research, and we shouldn't be doing it. And they did that, and it fucked up, and it escaped, right? And now they've gone, oh no, and they've covered that up. I think that's actually what happened. That's my personal opinion.
It's very interesting, just to jump in, that Joao, who I spoke to as well, who, to be fair, when I spoke to Joao, I didn't know what angle he was thinking. I didn't know where he thought, and he sort of leaned on the more, let's call it logic, in the sense of it's what the media's saying. He was kind of leaning towards there being no big conspiracy, but he also said the one thing he can get behind is the possibility it did come from a lab. So I find it interesting that both of you are saying that point. So anyway, we
can move on from that slide. But yeah, I mean, the comedian Jon Stewart put it perfectly which is there's a lab in Wuhan called the Wuhan Novel Coronavirus Laboratory, right?
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's like the name of the thing is on the door of the lab. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be like what's his joke about it is like if you live near Willy Wonka and you're like, oh, where's all this chocolate coming from? Oh, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
No, good point.
yeah, I think
I
it
might
came
look
out by
more into that,
mistake.
actually. I think I'll look more into that. I'd not really thought about that. I'd not really considered. I'd not really.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just more because I was at the point that I didn't think it really mattered where it had come from at this point. Do you know what I mean? But I will look into that.
The only reason I think it matters is because we should stop doing that research as a global community. It's not like the evil Chinese were doing it, or that the Americans and Europeans were in on that lab. We helped fund it, right? It's like a global initiative,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
And it's called gain of function research, where essentially you enhance viruses in order to know how to beat them, right?
Yeah.
That's the logic, but it's clearly a mistake to do this.
No,
Clearly,
this is the result of a leap.
yeah, it's bad. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. But anyway, that's why I think it matters, because we should basically use this pandemic as a reason to never do gain of function research again in any country. But anyway, that's an aside.
Well, should we?
So go on.
I want to jump back because I think we got excited, jumped through loads of stuff. So I want to go back to where we started really and ask, what would you say to people? Because I'm seeing this a lot now, that it's just like, this is just the flu, basically. That's what people are saying. It's just another flu. So what would you say to that?
I'd say look at the death rate of the flu compared to this. It's just not the same. I mean, maybe with Omicron, actually, now that it's evolved again, Omicron is slightly milder, so it does get you closer to this kind of flu-like quality. What I would say is, you say it's just the flu, but I mean, the last global pandemic we had was the flu, the Spanish flu, and that killed 100 million people.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah.
So saying it's just like the flu can be pretty bad, man. I've had my flu vaccine every year for God knows how long, because I'm asthmatic, right?
Okay.
So the flu for the vast majority of people is fine. But if you're asthmatic, or if you're very young, or if you're very old, it's really not. So if you have any underlying conditions, COPD, things like that, autoimmune condition, HIV, anything like that, the flu can seriously fuck you up.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one point. And also I would say COVID's way more transmissible than the flu. Way more. Like orders of magnitude. Particularly Omicron, we're talking like 10 times more transmissible than the flu.
Right. Okay.
So even if it was just the flu, imagine it's the flu on steroids, right?
Yeah.
Then what you end up with, the thing we're really scared about with COVID, and maybe this is what people are getting confused, we're not scared that COVID is going to kill every single person. Like, that's obviously not the concern. Like, it's not going to kill everyone. It's not going to kill even 1%, right? The problem is, if it just all came at once, right? And we had no lockdown, we had no vaccination, we had no kind of defense against the virus.
Yeah.
Every single hospital would just be full of COVID patients. And that's what happened last January, right? There was no capacity. There was, people, it's funny, sorry, I'm getting a little distracted here, but people were taking videos of inside hospitals and going, look, it's empty. See, I've proven that it's a conspiracy, right? Sure. But what was actually happening was the COVID wards were completely packed, but obviously you can't go in them because they're sealed for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
So the COVID wards were packed, but all the other wards were empty.
Okay.
Because many of the doctors and nurses have been reassigned to the COVID wards, right? So the thing we're really worried about is healthcare system collapse. And things like oxygen shortages. If we don't have capacity in intensive care, then you get like what happened in India, right? I'd recommend anybody listening to Google what happened in India when there was the massive Delta wave hit, right?
Okay.
the hospitals were completely full. The entire country's health system, well, actually not, it's a massive country. So in many states, the healthcare system completely failed. And people were dumping bodies in the river Ganges, which is obviously very sacred in India. So many people lay their dead in the Ganges as a spiritual thing, when they die. The numbers of bodies washing up on the shores of the Ganges in India was unprecedented. Wow. The entire river was full of corpses.
Wow. Okay.
You have villages where there was one doctor, servicing people in the village, and the healthcare system's completely overwhelmed, and people just died, in their millions. The actual death toll of India is unknown, basically, because they couldn't even test them. Just a shitload of people died, right? And that's what we're worried about. Bodies in the streets, bodies piling up, hospitals full, right?
Yeah.
And even if that only affects 0.5% of people, so what's Britain's population? 66 million. So you have 600,000 people getting, dying, potentially. I mean, we're already at almost 200,000.
Right.
It shows how much we've fucked it up. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, good points. And yeah, if anyone who heard stuff about India and mentioned COVID wards, I actually watched some videos back a year ago, maybe, of just people filming COVID wards. It's not nice viewing, but if you don't think this is a thing, it's probably worth looking into if you want to see what happened. Anyway, I think now we get on to the most controversial subject of the moment, which is the vaccine. So let's talk about the vaccine, Luke. Why would people not trust it? Why should people take it, and so on? Yeah, go for it.
Well, I would say that the death rate, I mean, basically, you just want to look at the figures for deaths in the UK. One sec. Let's see if I can quickly share my screen with you, actually. I know that seems...
Okay, yeah, I'm up with that. Will that come across in the recording? Does it work like that?
I hope so.
Yeah, well, let's go for it, see what happens.
So...
Screen share, do I have to press something?
I think I do it.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Share screen. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, yeah. Well, it doesn't matter too much.
Try now. Try one more time.
Sweet.
Doesn't work, then we'll just leave it.
But... Yeah.
Oh, there we go. We're in.
So basically, the vaccination program in the UK started in December of 2020, right?
Yes.
And one thing I've heard is lots of people say, "Oh, but you should see the spike in deaths after the vaccination program," as if the vaccination program caused the deaths, right? So bear in mind that in order with the vaccines, you need to wait ideally 3 to 6 weeks between each dose, right? So you've got your first. Can you see my mouse move?
I can see it. I'm just for anyone who's watching this, if this doesn't come across, we apologize, but yeah, I'm not sure how it will come across in the recording, but yeah.
So basically. The death rate was a huge spike in deaths last year, around this time last year, like unbelievable spike in deaths, right?
Yes.
Now the thing you got to remember is you need 3 to 6 weeks between each dose, right? So some people were only getting elderly people were only getting their second dose like in January, right? Yeah. And if you catch the infection over Christmas, which a lot of people did, it's too late. And also, people only die after COVID after they've had it for about 2 weeks, usually. Okay. Usually, after about 2 weeks, you either get better or die, basically.
Okay. Right.
So you can see here, like, the deaths just unbelievable, right? 1,600 people died on the 26th of January.
Yeah, right.
So, and obviously, if people have only had one dose and they're elderly, they're unprotected, right?
Okay.
And then, so this is what happens when this was in a lockdown, right? And this was in a lockdown, right? Look at these peaks here, right?
Yeah. So this was
the numbers of people that died, yeah? And then what we did in July was completely relieve all coronavirus restrictions. So basically, let the virus go. Right? We just let it do what it wanted. It ripped through. Right? And we had the Delta wave, which came in July. And you can see here the deaths. Just look at that compared to the size of those other two peaks.
So where you are right now, is that now? Is that today? Or is that?
No, the very end.
That's today.
That's today, yeah.
Oh right, no worry. Oh right, okay. So the deaths is
so you can see basically the point I'm making in short is the previous two peaks you can see on that graph.
Sure.
The two big mountains.
Yeah.
That's a COVID wave without vaccination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now look at this. Third, I wouldn't even call it a wave, it's a bump, right?
Yeah.
Delta. That's Delta, mostly. And then obviously towards the end, you get Omicron. But look again, the Omicron deaths, not that many.
So that's 0 deaths on that day, wasn't it? Right there.
Yeah, I
just saw one that just was 0.
That might be Christmas Day. That was Christmas Day, yeah. So I think I just recorded. That was just because no one was working to record.
No one was working to press the button, right?
So you get slightly higher. But yeah, so 3rd of January yesterday, we got 42 deaths.
Yeah.
42. What do we have 3rd of January last year?
Yeah.
1 sec. I don't want to. Well, the 5th of January we had 874.
Yeah.
So you can see just the sheer difference, and the people that say that those waves were caused by the vaccine, I would say, well, first of all, a lot of people hadn't had their dose by then. Yeah. And in this first wave here, where you've got 1,116, 1,036, that was 6 months before the vaccine came out. So what was killing them then? So that's, I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Sure. I'm hoping that screen share did work on the recording. If not, we were basically, you heard the dates it was being mentioned, and we were just talking about the graphs.
Yeah.
I've got something to say about that, and that will be when we talk more about conspiracy. But at the moment, I want to stay on the vaccine for now. So let's talk about vaccines. Like, why would you not trust? No, we're going on conspiracy with that, aren't we? So let's talk about how the vaccine works and why it's safe. Let's say that. Let's go there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we spoke about this briefly earlier, but like another time. But I would like to tell the story of Edward Jenner just very quickly. The man who discovered vaccines. He realized that it was at a time when smallpox was ravaging in the 1800s, I think. Maybe even late 1700s. I need to get my dates right, but a couple hundred years ago, basically, smallpox ravaging. He realised that the milkmaids near on the farm where he lived didn't catch smallpox, or if they did, they didn't get very sick, right? Yeah. And that was realised because he realised they all caught cowpox, right, which is a thing you can catch if you touch cows' udders, basically. But cowpox isn't very deadly at all, whereas smallpox obviously is. So he figured out that the cowpox and the smallpox must be similar in some way. He didn't think about it in terms of viruses because he wasn't quite. We didn't have germ theory then, so he didn't know. But what he did was he experimented on himself in what I think is an incredibly gangster move. He infected himself with cowpox.
Yeah.
And then infected himself with smallpox, right?
Wow.
To test his own theory. So yeah, extremely brave man. And had it gone wrong, he probably would have died of smallpox, but he didn't. In fact, he barely got sick. And then he realized, and this is he was inoculated, as he called it. And that's essentially what it does. I mean, people say that that the vaccines are unnatural. You're putting an unnatural thing in your body. It's actually one of the most natural things you can do. You're training your immune system. Your immune system is a learning system, right? And you're training your immune system to recognize a virus so that it can fight it.
Sure.
Most people probably know how this works. And that's all that it's doing, whether it's through mRNA, which is a new technology, but it wasn't developed because of COVID. It was actually in development for a long time before COVID. And what that does is releases some genetic material, which then tricks your immune system into thinking it's fighting a virus, right? It's like a tiny genetic fragment of the
Well, I think
coronavirus.
that's the thing that's scaring people, isn't it? One of the things that it's from a lab and it's something to do with DNA and some stuff like that. Do you know? So people, I've heard people saying that their DNA is possibly going to be changed from this.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. What I would say to that is, where's the evidence of people's DNA being changed? I mean, also I would say, if you're concerned about the mRNA vaccine, so there are other vaccines which don't use mRNA. I think Novavax. I'm just quickly looking here. Yeah, I think Novavax and a couple of others. And I think AstraZeneca isn't mRNA. So the one that we developed in this country, right?
Yeah.
With Oxford University. And there's a general point I want to make here, which is one of the main reasons to trust the vaccine, and one of the main reasons to trust just the ordinary narrative, I guess, is doctors and scientists are not the government.
Okay.
Like, that's the key point I want to make. And the media, right? They're not the government. Well, in some cases, like the BBC is kind of state-led, but even so, these are separate institutions, right? There are some scientists that work for the government, right? But the vast majority of scientists work for universities. Anyone who's been to university will tell you that most of the people they interact with, most of the people in academia or in research, fucking hate the government. Like,
right, that's a good point. Yeah,
because they're starved of resources. You ask universities what they think of Boris Johnson. Like, you know, they detest him. And the same with doctors, right? You know, my father's a doctor. You know, our very good friend Kynes is a doctor. Nurses, I mentioned Naomi. People that work in the healthcare system in general.
Yeah,
these are not the government.
Yeah,
it's not one big organization that just they all collude and they work together. When the doctors, when they were talking about the NHS being privatized a few years ago, that when doctors went on strike, 98% of doctors voted to strike in opposition to the changes to the NHS. 98% of doctors.
Wow.
You know, I meet doctors all the time who hate this government. So what's their incentive to lie? What, you know, where's this coming from? I just don't understand why they would do this. I don't understand what their motivation is. Why would all the doctors lie? Are they all being paid off? Are all the scientists being paid off?
You know, that's a very good point, because there's a lot of people involved in this. There's a lot of, across the world, there are a lot of doctors and a lot of scientists, and there's only a handful that are coming out and saying that it's bad, I suppose. And I suppose, what's the motive? What's the motive for them to come out and say it's bad?
Interestingly, one of them as well, if you look into, you know, when you get people online that are like COVID skeptic PhDs, like doctor, look at what their PhD is in, because it's usually from an online course or from something like they'll say I'm doctor, but it turns out their doctorate is in like nutrition science.
And there was one a chiropractor who was coming
something like that, exactly. Like, and I'm not saying there aren't medical professionals with real concerns, you know, but it's the same with climate change, right?
Sure.
97.5% or something of climate scientists say like this is happening, like this is definitely happening, and then you just get the odd, you know, frankly crackpot that doesn't agree. But with the human race, no one's ever going to agree 100%. But when you have like 90+% of people agreeing on a thing, that's usually the one. Yeah,
good point. So I suppose let's go on to conspiracy in itself. Like, I think that brings us nicely onto it, that I suppose if you look at, I mean, there's many different reasons for not taking the vaccine and what is happening at the moment. I mean, like, I think you've probably guessed that I'm pretty much on the line of what is happening. I kind of, you know, there's always room for wiggle room, but I generally believe what is being said is what's happening, because the majority of people seem to be thinking that. There's a surprising amount of people, especially friends of mine and people I know, that some are just like a bit skeptical. A lot of people for spiritual reasons think it's a bad thing. Personally, I don't think the two things are linked together. I don't think if you have the vaccine, it makes you non-spiritual. I don't see why those two things are even in conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but my mother, anyone who's watching this who knows me, might know the fact that my mum is a very spiritual person, practices, does meditation groups, does energy work, does loads of things which, frankly, me and my mum disagree on because I don't believe in some of the things she does. But she's had some real flack from her people in her spiritual community for taking the vaccine.
I was interested to bring this up, but I didn't want to just bring your mum up, to be fair. So I'm glad you brought it up. So please, talk about that.
Well, yeah, she used to be a nurse, right? My mum used to be just a nurse, regular nurse. And she then moved to psychotherapy and was a psychotherapist, and then moved into more spiritual work. And now her work, she tries to like combine all three, right? Bit of psychotherapy, bit of spiritualism, but obviously if you've got something physically wrong with you, she'll always say the doctor. She'll say it's complementary medicine, not alternative medicine. She always makes that clear, because there's obviously stories of people, not accepting medical science and instead, going on a yoga retreat or only eating raw food or, And my mum's position has always been, and I think this is the correct position for someone involved in spiritual work, see a doctor, right? And do these things.
Yeah.
And meditate and practice good nutrition and do energy work and whatever it is that the therapy is, do that. Sure. So anyway, we're getting slightly off topic here, but she was slightly ostracized among some of her communities just for getting it, right?
Okay.
But she'll openly tell you her connection with the spiritual side of herself and her ability to practice all the things that she practices haven't been affected one iota, not a dot.
I'd love to talk to her, actually. That'd be very interesting.
She'd offer quite a good perspective on it.
That's what I'm thinking, because I've had a few people that I've spoke to that, because they're spiritual, they think that this is again, like the say a vaccine was forced on a nation, yet there was no alternative holistic version, and it's I suppose you'll have your own views on that, but I think that's what a lot of people think, and that's what a lot of people are with.
Well, the thing I would encourage people just in general on vaccines, if they're anti-vaccine in general, I would encourage them to go and look at a graveyard from around even turn of the 20th century, right? Like 1902. Go and look at a grave from of people that died at 1902. You'll see their ages on there. Age 22, age 15, age 38, age 12, age 6. Like, we're not used to young people dying in large numbers, right? But this used to be the norm. People just used to die of shit all the time. And the only reason that they don't anymore is because of medical science, including vaccines, right? Vaccines have saved more lives than all humans have died in every war since the beginning of human history.
Wow,
that's a fact.
A big number.
Yeah,
interesting.
Hundreds and hundreds of millions of lives have been saved by vaccines, and the only reason the unvaccinated people in this country can continue to live is because with all the other things, with polio, with smallpox, we've either eradicated them or we've reached herd immunity. So, anyway, with the vaccines, I just want to address one concern, which is, I guess, that obviously it's made by the pharmaceutical companies and they shouldn't be trusted and, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I actually have some time for this argument because I would be the first critic of pharmaceutical companies. I'm worried about their role in all this, particularly now they've started making money off it. But what I would say is the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was the first vaccine we rolled out, was done, in fact, the vast majority of vaccines have been paid for with public money and researched at public institutions like the University of Oxford, right? So when I think that my taxpayer money and your taxpayer money went to fund research at the best university we have in this country, i.e. Oxford.
Yeah.
And we developed a vaccine in conjunction with AstraZeneca, the company, which was then released, for free to everyone that wanted it. Now, I don't think mandates, and I don't agree with mandates personally. Yeah. But that to me is a beautiful thing, right? Public money with scientists working at a really prestigious public institution created this life-saving thing, which was then given out for free for the sake of, human dignity and kindness and compassion. And that is a beautiful thing. And yeah, I just think that we should celebrate that.
I will be inclined to agree, but I think we should address the fact that people think that this is, the vaccine potentially is going to make you infertile, potentially might kill you, it might change your DNA. There are people out there who think that this is a master plan to get us. Now, I think that if you're in a position like at the moment, you're thinking that not that they're coming to get us, like the shadow government or whoever they're coming to get. They're not coming to get us. They're literally getting us at the moment. But a lot of people must be sitting back, seeing people getting their vaccines and thinking, wow, these people are stupid and they are under the spell of this and they are going to potentially die. Now, for those people out there listening, I'd say to you as well, I think these people need a bit of compassion, really, because if you're in a place in your head where you genuinely think you are under attack right now, I think you mustn't be in a good place, to be fair. So my heart goes out to you, and I think I feel for you, because I personally don't feel like that's what's happening, and I'm sure you don't either. But if you're out there and think that is what is happening, you mustn't be in a good place now. That's all I'm saying to you.
It's dark. Like, to think that the entire world is geared with some master plan to corrupt and kill and make people infertile. Like, listen, there are real conspiracies, and I wouldn't even call them conspiracies. There are real massive problems, right? The UK is one of the largest arms dealers in the world. We sell weapons to brutal dictators all over the world who use British-made weapons to completely suppress opposition and to kill innocent civilians. It happens all the time, every single day. It's a matter of public record. We should be really, really angry about it. And I personally am. But, and that's just one that I pulled out my ass. There are innumerable things, right? Big global problems. We're run by essentially our governments are bought and paid for by corporations. Like, I think this is true, right? I think there's a lot of evidence for it. America's even worse. But that doesn't mean that like every healthcare official or virology researcher or whatever is out to get you. That's very, very, very different. The people with power essentially want more money and more power. That's, it's a tale as old as time. Actually, COVID, in most respects, was a problem for them. Why do you think the Tories were so eager to open everything up? What's interesting is a lot of Conservatives are commercial landlords, meaning they own property in the inner city, right? Particularly offices. So they wanted everyone to go back to work, because if everybody works from home, then the offices fail.
Yeah.
So, and the inner city economies start to fail. So COVID was actually a big problem for a lot of the elite, particularly in this country, and particularly for people like Donald Trump, guy who owns loads of hotels. No one was going to hotels, which is why you see the right wing in across the world actually not really do very much about. Well, that's not true. We locked down, we did some stuff, but in comparison to say New Zealand, we did sweet fuck all.
Yeah.
And we did that to protect certain financial interests. And people want to look at that angle of it as well. You know, I actually think recently, like, we shouldn't lock down. I think we've got enough immunity with the vaccines and everything to sort of keep the deaths low enough. But, you know, I would oppose another lockdown. But there have been times in the past where I'm like, why aren't we locking down? We should be locking down. There's too many people dying. And the reason we weren't locking down is to protect the pockets of the people in charge.
I find it interesting that Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland have imposed new restrictions, haven't they? Whereas England, we didn't do it, and we seem to be all right.
Yeah, I mean, the deaths lag. I imagine, like, basically a shitload of people got it over Christmas, and the deaths lag 2 weeks later. So
it's all right unless it's someone you know or your family, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, this is it. We're doing all right, but then, yeah, like, and I genuinely don't know what the correct course of action is. What's interesting is that, well, at least in Wales and Scotland, their governments are more left-leaning, right? So a lot of what you have is this trade-off between public health and the economy.
Yeah.
And because our politicians are conservative in England, we lent towards the economy because they essentially value profit more than they value human life. That's just what the Conservatives are like. Whereas that's not the case for Welsh Labour or the Scottish National Party. That's a very simplistic overview, but I would say that's some of it.
I see where you're coming from. Right. Yeah. I think we've covered quite a lot there, haven't we? And
if it was meant to be 30 minutes, I think we're over time, but I don't know.
There's not really a time on the limit. I think we're coming up to an hour. I'm just a bit aware of it going from day to night, and I'm getting a bit dark here. I've got no way of lighting it, which I suppose is fine because it's about you, not me. So you're lit very nicely.
I've got a lamp.
Yeah, I'm in future I will get a lamp. Let's put it like that. Right. I feel like we're wrapping up. But is there any other points?
Let me look at my paper and see if I've got.
Please, like, I'm enjoying this a lot. I don't want to leave any points unsaid. So I'll just take this moment while you're having a look through your notes to say, if anyone is listening to this and agrees or disagrees, please comment, please share this. And if you agree and you want to come on and say your own piece, please get in touch to talk to me. If you disagree, also please get in touch and come and talk to me. And Luke also said earlier he'd be up for debating if we could get 2 people on. But the whole point of this is not to have arguments. So if I've got 2 people on, you start shouting at each other, I will just mute there and sit there and watch it. I will dictate to these interviews and not let you argue. I want debates, not arguments. Anyway, Luke, if you've got any more points, please.
Well, I'll just sort of follow on from that and just I guess we've said most of it. My key points are essentially, I don't trust the government. I don't really trust the media all that much either, right?
Yeah.
I do trust doctors and I do trust scientists, right?
Okay.
Those are not the same people, and I really want to just stress that to everybody, right? And all I would say is I would really encourage anyone who hasn't the complete opposite view to me, please come and speak to me like on this format, whatever. I'm not going to be rude. I'm not going to be shouty. There's been far too much of that over this pandemic, far too many people screaming at one another, particularly on social media. I think an honest conversation that's conducted politely, I think it could be really good. You know, and maybe you've been listening to the things I've said and you're like, oh no, he's talking shit. You know, I want to hear it. You know, I'm always open to stuff, but I would really encourage anyone who thinks opposite of me to have a chat with me.
Thanks for saying that. And I suppose that brings us nicely to the end. I feel like there's so many points we didn't cover, but I think we outweighed them with the points that we did cover.
Yeah, you can't do everything.
We can't. And maybe if I carry on doing these interviews 6 months down the line, you come back on, or like Luke just said, if anyone wants to debate, it'd be good to get 2 people on together and see how that pans out. Like I say, I'm just new to doing these as well. I mean, but I think it's good to get the conversation going and just see what people think, because I think a lot of people, COVID's been lonely for a lot of people. And I think, especially if you've got views that aren't the popular view, you might be spinning these round in your head, going in social media, going down rabbit holes. You might be in a bad place right now. And it'd be good to talk to people who maybe think differently than you without having an argument. So I suppose
I'm gonna send you some stuff as well. some links. So if people are curious, so here is
Yeah,
a link.
if you
I'll do it
send,
afterwards. Yeah.
no, no,
The
it's fine. Yeah,
particularly
you go, you go.
particularly the thing I mentioned about India,
Yeah.
because it's pretty horrific. The stuff about the Ganges, yeah, being literally full of bodies. So
Wow.
I'll post that.
That seems like a very place to
It's
end.
horrible, but
Yeah.
you know, this is the shit we're dealing with. It's not nice.
No, of course. Right. So yeah, Luke, so if you've actually managed to get right to the end of this video, and like I say, if you want to come on and do your own, if you want to pick like or even pick hate or whatever, share it, come and talk, have your own interview. Luke is gonna send me any links. I will include them in the comment section or in the description on any, if this is on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or wherever I put it. But we could talk all day about this, I'm sure, and I'm sure a lot of people do talk all day about this. So thanks for coming on. Thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. You've made some very good points, Luke, and I will talk to you again. Nice one, mate.
Right. See you later, man.
See ya. Bye. Bye.